What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. I'm Daniel Oyefusi. That is David Neal. Thanks so much for tuning in. Quick reminder before we start, make sure to subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, like, share, comment, as well as subscribe to the Miami Herald. And you definitely want to make sure you're subscribed to the Miami Herald because we've got a jam-packed episode, actually recording Tuesday morning instead of our normal Monday evening. We had a little bit of technical difficulties on my end. However, it was
Which is why
mainly
I'm
because
talking to
it
my
was,
plotter right now.
yeah, we're working through that as well. But also, had to delay the recording because it was a busy first day of the legal tampering period in the NFL. As of Monday at noon, teams were able to enter, negotiate deals, handshake agreements, start agreeing to terms. And boy, it was a busy day for the South Florida team. Looked a little bleak. The news coming out of South Florida was not good at first. A lot of guys saying their goodbyes, granted some big deals, some well-earned deals to leave the Dolphins, which I know brought a little angst to fan base, or something that we kind of predicted and
We
foreshadowed.
told you last week. Don't be
Don't say
angsty
we didn't tell
now.
you.
We told you last week.
But
You weren't listening, you missed it. That's on you. We
So
here.
a little bleak to start off, but the Dolphins, they were making some moves as well. They lost a couple guys, but they also agreed to terms with a couple guys. They also made some moves to make sure that they can actually sign those guys, restructuring some contracts to become cap compliant ahead of the start of the new league year at 4 p.m. So we're gonna get into all of that, kind of recapping day one, and then look ahead to what other moves the Dolphins could possibly make. Hey, if there's some breaking news as we record, we'll pivot. We'll get into that. But again, let's start with, I think what was probably the biggest news of the day, which was, kind of the first news of the day, which was, kind of the mass exodus, the free agency raid, the purge, however you want to call it. As expected, some top Dolphins free agents did agree to terms to sign elsewhere. The two most notable were some really big deals for some homegrown players that the Dolphins drafted. Christian Wilkins, he won the lottery. He bet and he won. He is agreed to terms with a 4-year, $110 million deal with the Las Vegas Raiders. $84 million, I believe. Make sure I get that right. $80+ million guaranteed. He was the top defensive tackle on the market. There were some deals a couple of days ago that only boosted his market. And he cashed in. Rob Hunt, right guard, 5 years, $100 million with the Carolina Panthers, $63 million guaranteed, as well as Andrew Van Ginkel and Brandon Jones. Van Ginkel, he's going to reunite with Brian Flores in Minnesota, signing a 2-year deal, $20 million with the Vikings. And then Brandon Jones, who we all know was a full-time starter a couple years back, dealt with the big knee injury, came back and started some games this past year. He's cashing out too, 3 years, $20 million to head to the Denver Broncos. So the Dolphins, all in all, they essentially lose 4 guys, all homegrown talents over the past couple of years. 3 defensive contributors, and obviously the big offensive lineman with the Rob Hunt. We'll start with that, and I don't think that was much surprise. I think the Brandon Jones deal surprised me a bit. Like, I know Barry texted me, because we've been in constant communication since yesterday, coordinating our coverage, our blogs, our online stories. And he mentions Brandon, and I'm like, oh, they're re-signing Brandon Jones because he had talked about there being interest. And then I look and I'm like, oh, wait, he got a deal and he got a bag. I think that was a bit of a surprise. I think that was the guy who I thought that there was a role for him to return. We weren't expecting Christian Wilkins and Rob Hunt to leave. Those deals definitely surprised me when I first saw them. But this is what happens on the first day of free agency. The teams that get money, they put out a high bid, a high offer out there. But those, especially when the details and the specifics of the numbers came out, it was clear that the Dolphins never had a chance. Obviously they tried to get a deal with Wilkins done before the tag deadline. They tried to get a deal with Rob Hunt done. He wanted to test free agency, and for good reason. But just looking at the breakdowns of the cap hits, like $30 million next year for Christian Wilkins, $25 million for Rob Hunt. I tweeted or put a tweet out, a couple tweets out yesterday. Like the Dolphins just aren't in a position right now to do that. Like we talk about the cap and whether the cap is real and whatnot. They're just not in a position to do that. I said they have 30 players under contract next year. And they have about $65 million they're gonna have to use to rebuild this roster. So like they really weren't in a position to give out these high price contracts. I mentioned it last week. I think that this was kind of the result of some of these big moves that they made the past couple of years. Getting a Bradley Chubb, getting a Jalen Ramsey, getting a Tyreek Hill. I think it kind of sped up the timeline. Eventually, like they were such an influx of young talent that at some point, like you're not gonna be able to pay everybody. But I think that maybe kind of going all in the past couple of years that sped up the process. I think that the frustration for Dolphins fans, I think that honestly it should be like a point of pride that you've been able to develop players who are highly coveted. You'd like to keep these guys, but that doesn't always happen. Hold up, I think the
Yeah,
frustration is that that core wasn't able to get something substantial in terms of playoff success. So it's like, hey, these guys are leaving, but they weren't even able to help us get to our ultimate goal. So I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it is unfortunate, but I mean, I don't think that anything was really a surprise. Like the Dolphins weren't going to be in a position to get into a bidding war. Like they just weren't, and I think that we saw that very clearly with these guys departing yesterday.
And we, as we said last week, and we talked about you can't let Christian Wilkins hit the free agency market and test the market because you know what's going to happen.
Yep.
Somebody's going to make an offer a lot of money. He's going to go get his money, as he should. And
Yeah.
there, I don't think Dolphins fans should. They're not Chris Greer. There is no pride to them that they you drafted well and developed well. You really did a good job. You can spot that talent. There's no pride to them for that. They want their team to win games and win playoff games and get further into the playoffs than they have since I don't know,
Thousand.
2000. I think
Yeah.
2000. They won the playoff game against the Colts and got to the divisional round, and the Raiders, knocked them out. But yeah, there's no pride to that. The thing is, and what it kind of brings home is something that we kind of maybe alluded to a little bit last week, the last couple of weeks, that the Dolphins window actually, that we thought was, these few years where they're going to have Tua and Tyreek and Waddle and everything. Well, on the defensive side of the ball, that window, it might just slam shut, and now you drive. You better hope they haven't boarded up that window, because it's a very different defense. You've got, Wilkins is out, X is gone. Even if you say, okay, X has
Jerome
played, slipped the
Baker.
last couple.
Yeah.
Jerome Baker's gone. And you've got Chubb and Jordan Phillips coming off, major injuries.
Yeah. Still like a lot of question marks on the defense, even though they
It's
made
going to
some
look a lot
additions that we're
different
going to
early
talk
on.
about. Yeah.
And so, but yeah, nothing that happened yesterday or the handshakes reached or anything. It was a surprise. You knew it. The Dolphins, they don't have the money, and so like we said, you don't have the money, you can't buy a Park Place or Boardwalk.
Yeah. I
Somebody else
mean,
can.
yeah. I mean, in regards to the window, yeah. I mean, I was always of the belief, like I know a lot of people said like there's a 2-3 year window. I never believed that. Like I looked, I'm not, again, I always say I'm just a guy who spends all of his time on over the cap. But like, if you just kind of looked at the breakdown of the contracts that were coming up, the cap hits and whatnot, like I always was of the belief that, 2023 was like that was the 1 year for this current group. Like when they got Jalen Ramsey and they made some of the moves they made last offseason, I was like, all right, this is the 1 year for this group as constructed. Like you're not gonna be able to keep everybody. And the Dolphins could have, like, if they were really wanted to run it back with this current group, they could have squeezed it out. Like they could have done, the salary cap conversions, the base salary conversions, and pushed it down. And like really, if they were really wanted to, they could have with this current group. But it was clear that if they did that, then the following year was going to be kind of the year of reckoning. You could say that maybe this is the offseason of reckoning, so to speak, because they've lost so many guys. But I characterized it as a soft reset. Like there's still talent on the roster. Like you still got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, you still got Tua, you still got Teron Armstead who's coming back and he already reworked his deal, so he's gonna get some cap savings. You got Achan on defense, you still got Ramsey, Javon Holland. You still have these guys, and hopefully, Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips are able to come back at some point for 2024 and look like themselves. Obviously, they're going to be coming back from injury, so you want to temper expectations. But I said it's a soft reset because you still have the talent there. But unfortunately, this is the cost of doing business in the NFL. Like, when you pay a lot of guys and then you have some guys who are up for contracts, sometimes you aren't able to, come to an agreement. Sometimes you aren't able to find common ground and reach the finish line. And, unfortunately, you have some quality homegrown. I think that's really the frustration. Like, again, going back to what I said before, that's the frustration about it because you have these guys who, Greer had like, for all the criticisms, like, all those four guys that left, those are success stories that you can say, like, Chris Greer drafted them, Dolphins developed them. They produced and they played very good football. But now they're leaving. It'd be different if the Dolphins had a Super Bowl to show for, or they had some
Right.
playoff wins to show for. And it's like, all right,
Right.
well, at least we got something. Like, at least we can say like we really got something out of their play. But there's nothing to show for. And I think that's the
Right.
frustration. Like, literally, there's literally nothing to show for from.
Right.
I wrote it
They're
yesterday.
not even division title.
Christian Wilkins is one of the faces of the rebuild in 2019. The first like real pick of the Chris Greer era, I guess you could say. Him having like full autonomy over football operations, and he leaves 5 years later, and you don't have a playoff win, you don't have division title, you don't have anything. So I think that's the frustration there. But again, I think it's a soft reset. Like, are the Dolphins a better? We're going to talk about some of these additions, but are the Dolphins a better team this morning than they were yesterday morning before some of these guys signed deals elsewhere? Like, no, I don't think anyone can argue that. Like, there's no way anyone could reasonably argue that they are a better team today and right now than they were yesterday when they still had Christian Wilkins, Andrew Van Ginkel, Brandon Jones, and Rob Hunt. But I think that there is an opportunity to retool. We've already seen them do that. And hey, I mean, get used to having compensatory picks, because the Dolphins haven't had any for like 4 years since 2020. It looks like they're going to get a couple. They still have some guys who might sign deals elsewhere. It looks like they're going to get a pair of third-round picks for losing Wilkins and Hunt. And Greer said, like, hey, we got to have an influx of young talent at some point. We can't just keep on making these big swings. So now this is the time to get that young talent again. Again, it's kind of periods and transitions and kind of eras. They had the early rebuild era. They unfortunately weren't able to get much out of that. Some of these guys left. Now it's time to stock up some picks, get some young guys in there, and hopefully you can develop them and do what you weren't able to do with some of these other guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing you can do because you. But when you make the trade for Bradley Chubb, when you make you trade for Tyreek Hill, you trade for Jalen Ramsey. That's not. Those aren't. Those aren't. They're big. It does say you're all in. It says you're all. It says.
Oh, for sure.
Or it says you're all in now. Not.
For sure.
We're all in for the next 5 years, next 4 years.
Yeah.
This says now because they're not dumb. This is their job. They ran the numbers. I'm quite sure they were sitting there going, we probably need to get something or out of this season, or we're gonna have to go to plan D. because I'm sure plans, they used up plans B and C during the season or during the play, and so, but it's interesting that the side of the ball that appears to be most affected is the side of the ball that wasn't so identified with the Dolphins most of last season, but was the side of the ball that played okay in those
late in the
games
season.
against teams that, later in the season, and mostly against teams that you're going to have to beat at some point.
Yeah.
So because the offense didn't look great against Philly, didn't look great. I mean, they Dolphins pulled out a win against Dallas, a solid team win, I think.
That
But
was really a defensive led. That was really a
right,
defensive led win.
right, yeah, the Dolphins got enough points, uh, and certainly in the playoffs, ugh, you know, you can make all the noise you want about oh, it was really 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 cold. Well, yeah, and it was so cold that it doesn't matter where you're from. Kansas City's not used to playing in that. Nobody on either side of the ball is used to playing that. And uh, what happened on that day? Well, Kansas City's offense, I mean, admittedly, they've got the quarterback of this generation, but they figured out how to get enough points while the Dolphins couldn't take advantage of their defense, keeping them in the game. So, I think that's kind of it almost feels cautionary. It almost feels like we're a little bit like, wait a minute, as the defense needs to retool and everything, it's almost like, oh my goodness, did we get suddenly thrown back into the Marino era again, where we have this offense that looks like it might be really, really good, except for certain games, and a defense that we might not be able to rely on. Um, that was one thought I had yesterday as I was listening to everybody, go get their money.
Yeah, I
But
mean it's definitely little bit of a transition for the defense, and obviously I think we have to add to that. They have a new defensive coordinator, Anthony Weaver, who's going to shape this unit in his vision. They did release Emmanuel Agba, Jerome Baker, Xavier Howard before this all started. So like in total, they've lost about a half dozen guys who have contributed to this defense in some way or another the past couple of years. Some of that was, expected for cap related reasons. Some of it was just, again, like Brandon Jones, like guys just leave Christian Wilkins, like they get better deals and it's time for them to go. But yeah, I mean that unit will definitely be remodeled. It's going to be interesting to see who they bring in. Again, they made some deals that we're going to talk about soon. But the work is definitely not done. The Dolphins have a lot of holes to try to plug and to try to fix, and as they retool this offense and it's really this team as a whole after this kind of this first free agency raid as I describe it. All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back on the other side of things, as I said, it was not all doom and gloom for the Dolphins after seeing some of their top players leave. They also brought in some reinforcements, agreed to terms with some guys. We're going to get into some of those moves as well, see what might be next for the Dolphins as we're on day 2 of the legal tampering period before the new league starts on Wednesday. Stay locked with us, and we'll be back soon. What's going on, everybody? Still here on the Dolphins In Depth podcast with David Neal, talking all things Dolphins. Now, the first half, we broke down the kind of depressing start to free agency in the opening hours. The Dolphins losing a quartet of contributors over the past quartet, right?
yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Quartet.
was thinking, is that all? Is it not a quintet? Are we sure it's not a
Yeah, no,
quintet or a
definitely
sextet?
four. Definitely four. Losing 4 guys who are set to sign elsewhere, 4 homegrown talents. But I think that the mood and the tenor of the Dolphins Twitter kind of changed. In the second half of the day, the Dolphins, no, they weren't just twiddling their thumbs. They were making a lot of moves. They agreed to terms with 3 players, a pair of inside linebackers, and they might have just gotten a new starting center. Start on the defensive side of the ball, where they first signed Anthony, or they reportedly agreed to terms with former Browns linebacker Anthony Walker on a 1-year deal. He's a local guy. Played high school in Miami Gardens, from Miami. So he looked like, hey, maybe that was the Jerome Baker replacement after he was released. It looks like he's not coming back. But then a couple hours later, it's like, nah, the Dolphins are adding a second inside linebacker, and they added another one in Seattle's Jordan Brooks. They reportedly agreed to a 3-year, $30 million deal. And if you just kind of follow the money, he definitely appears to be kind of the front runner to replace Jerome Baker, former first round pick, just 26 years old, 3 straight years of 100 tackles, 100 plus tackles, 4.5 career high 4.5 sacks this past season. So he definitely kind of fits the mold for the Jerome Baker replacement, if you want to call it that, especially as Anthony Weaver tries to get like his guys that fit his system. Then they rounded the day off by signing a really interesting offensive lineman from Tennessee Titans and Aaron Brewer, who looks like he could be the replacement at center for Connor Williams. Again, Connor Williams is a free agent. The Dolphins said that they were going to give him time as he rehabs from his ACL tear, and his agent said as well that he might take some time. But it looked like they may not have waited to get a replacement. Brewer, was formerly an undrafted free agent, came into the league as an undrafted free agent in 2020. But he's been a full-time starter the past 2 years, and he had his first full season as a center this past season. So it looks like for him, he kind of has the athleticism that the Dolphins kind of covet. He's a little bit smaller, 6'1", 295, but I think that he looks like he kind of fits the mold for what they're looking for in their offensive lineman. Did anything stick out to you from that trio of moves on the first day?
I actually like the going and getting the center because I the whole Connor Williams thing. I'm like, well, he might need to take some time, and they're like, no, 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 no. He can operate on his clock. The Dolphins need to operate on their clock, and they need to handle their business. Yeah, the signings, the linebacker signings. I think they're both okay. We'll see. It's not nothing. It's something, but I kind of thought both okay. Yeah, not overwhelmed, but happy they started to address the situation.
Yeah.
So and was it Walker he played at Pace High School, and right there on the edge of Miami Gardens / Opelika. Like so close to the border that I think for years people we referred to Pace as being in Opelika. But yeah, so he looks like he looks more like a solid backup than a starter. But
yeah, it was interesting because he has, I mean, very experienced. I mean, he has 75 starts. Walker has 75 starts. He dealt with some injuries the past couple of years. Only played 12 games last year. But he was a starter in all those games. So it looks like just kind of, again, like we don't know everything about these guys. You just kind of do a little research, but it looks like he's more of like a run defender, maybe a guy who can fit in the rotation on early downs. Jordan Brooks, again, he has that profile as a former first round pick. He looks like more of a 3-down linebacker, like really the kind of natural replacement for Jerome Baker. And I think that they needed somebody to kind of complement David Long, who was really, really good against the run last year in his first season in Miami, but maybe not as strong in coverage. Looks like Jordan Brooks has the athletic profile to kind of hold up in coverage and do some of the stuff that Anthony Weaver might ask. So yeah, I mean those were solid moves. I mean, I don't think like those were. I mean, I don't think the Dolphins really made like a sexy move yesterday. Like linebacker, center. I mean, inside linebacker, so like those aren't moves that are maybe gonna like get you like out of your chair and or
but
whatnot.
they're
But
necessary. They're
yeah,
so
yeah,
necessary.
exactly.
It's strength up the middle, and
Yeah,
you definitely lost something up the middle, obviously with Christian Wilkins. So addressing the inside linebacker position and addressing the center position. I think center is probably one of the most underrated positions on an offense because centers do so much, and from the very obviously common thing that everybody can see, they snap the daggone ball, and
yeah.
you want to make a coach sweat, tell them, yeah, we're not really, we're not really getting it done on the snap. To the more complex things they do as far as getting everything else organized on the line. Uh, so yeah, I like they dealt with that. They, again, like we said, not sexy, but it does deal with positions of need and its strength at the middle in both on both sides of the ball. You're going to need
Yeah, I
that to
mean,
win.
yeah, I mean, I would say center is definitely not an underrated position in Miami. I mean, we've spoken a lot, and the Dolphins have spoken a lot about how important the center is for this offense. We saw how important it was when Connor Williams went down
Williams went
late in the
out.
season. The offense just truly wasn't the same. Like they were able to, still make plays, but it wasn't the same after he got hurt. And obviously, there were other injuries in play, but that was a really big loss. And I think that it was notable that on the first day, there were a lot of interior linemen and offensive linemen that really got some big deals. And I thought that it was notable that the Dolphins on the first day went out and made sure that they get a possible. Like I thought that regardless of I don't think that it would have been smart to wait for Connor Williams. I don't think that they were going to do that. Um, they gave Brewer a 3-year, $21 million deal. It was 3 years, $21 million deal were the report. So that's I mean that's starter money. Whether it's at center or whether it's maybe at guard because he does have that experience. I know our own Barry Jackson, kind of threw it out there that because Brewer can play guard and center. Connor Williams used to play guard before he played center. He said that maybe you can't, throw out the idea that maybe they sign Connor Williams later on. But keep in mind, I mean, this is going to be a long, drawn out process of rebuilding this team. They're going to get $18.5 million June 2nd when the Xavier Howard cap relief officially kicks in. If Connor Williams is still on the market, way after the draft and whatnot, and he wants to come back on a team friendly deal. Maybe you can bring him back at center. You can bring him back at guard and then play Brewer at center. I mean, I think that there's options there, but there's still a lot of holes to be filled.
Right.
Um, they still need to get a left guard and a right guard to replace Robert Hunt. They still need to get a cornerback. They might need to get a safety now. Maybe they need to get another wide receiver. Obviously, they added Johnny Smith, who we didn't really talk about that because that was kind of, I think that broke, either after we recorded or the day after we recorded. But they got a pass catching tight end, which is good. They had some playmakers. But there's still a lot of holes to be filled. And I know that they freed up about $30 million in cap space yesterday by restructuring, Jalen Ramsey, Zach Sealer, Alec Eagle, and Durham Smythe. And then they're going to get some more money from Teron Armstead's rework deal. But to fit in these deals that they just signed now, and then make some more additions because they're going to need to do that, and then honestly re-sign their own because they got 26 free agents. Like some of these guys are going to come back. Um, there's still a lot of work to be done, but I would love to see them really shore up the trenches.
Yeah.
You already lost Christian Wilkins. I know just from hearing and speaking to some of the draft Knicks and draft experts, it's not like a extremely strong class for players at Wilkins' position. So maybe you do need to get a veteran guy who's maybe 60-70% of Wilkins, but you're going to get him at much less, a fraction of a price that he signed elsewhere. And definitely I'd love to see them kind of jump on the offensive line market and get some guys in. Chris Greer already said hey, we're gonna have to add some guys regardless because we have 3 free agents and we already lost one. Maybe this Brewer signing signals that Williams won't be back. So I'd love to see them get some guys in. Again, all the moves won't be made this week because the Dolphins just don't have that cap space, that flexibility, and it is going to be a drawn out process. But I thought that they were very solid moves. Like again, are the Dolphins better right now? If you add in the 4 losses and 3 additions, and I guess you can throw Johnny Smith in there as well. Are
Yeah.
they a better team right now than they were, when the season ended? I can't say that. But I still think that there is a window and an opportunity for them to be competitive, to retool. And again, we're not playing games for what is it, March 12th while recording, another
Yeah.
6 months.
Right.
Let's be patient. Let's see what they can do. And then judge the team when it's all presently when it's all constructed instead of overreacting after every move. It's natural, and I think obviously there's an emotional connection to a lot of these homegrown talents and these guys that left. But the Dolphins, they're gonna they're not just sitting and twirling their fingers. They're making moves bringing guys in. And we'll see what else they got under their sleeve because like I said, they do have a lot of holes to fill.
I don't, it's not so much what's up their sleeve, it's what's in their wallet and what's in everybody else's wallet.
Yeah, I'm about to say they're
um,
not they're not gonna get they're
yeah,
not gonna get some money for a while. So again,
yeah,
you
yeah.
gotta be patient there.
And
You know,
you do, obviously there's always a tendency to, you react strongly because the early days of any kind of free agency period, even this early tampering period, which I think it's great. I think it's great. We had the early tampering period, so now the illegal tampering just moves back a few days earlier.
yeah,
But there's always that initial reaction, and um, you know, yeah, let's see if they've got let's see how they're gonna patch holes, and I think with the defensive tackle position, it might not be a particularly strong draft, but drafts are funny. You never know who slips and who
who
if
develops
there's
too.
if there's two guys who are worth a damn, and one of them slips,
The
you
Dolphins get
know,
them. Like it doesn't matter that
yeah,
it wasn't a weak class. You got the guy who was strong.
right,
Yeah,
right, exactly. Um, so yeah, this will this is the start of a sort of a long restructuring, rebuilding, not rebuilding, but kind of renovation, more remodeling. It's not a,
yeah. I was gonna say
it's
I like that. It's not a rebuild. It's a
right, right,
renovation.
right,
Yeah,
right. We're yeah, if we were on HGTV, it's not a tear down here.
yeah.
Uh, we're just doing, they're just doing a few rooms, yeah, updating, and dealing with some holes and some leaks. Uh, so the John Smith signing was interesting, and not just because he played at FIU, and it's probably this. I think you would argue probably the second best NFL player out of FIU, behind T.Y. Hilton. Um, the it's a tight end the Dolphins might actually use, um,
Yeah.
and he's certainly a veteran guy, but and so I think he fits what the Dolphins might kind of like to do, or might like to do more with their tight ends, to create some matchup problems, and you know other than having to, and still I think that might, if that creates a matchup problem in the middle, then that creates even more space for your fly guys on the outside to do what they do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like the skill set definitely fits what the Dolphins are trying to do. Like you look at, the stats about him over the past 3 years, like he leads all tight ends in yards after catch per reception. One of the first things Tyreek said here is Mike McDaniel wants to get us drunk off the yak. Um, he's great after the catch. He's physical. He breaks tackles. He's fast. So obviously,
Mm-hmm.
that just all fits into what Mike McDaniel's vision is. But it's the fact that he's a tight end and the fact that now it allows you to kind of be a little more multiple and a little more
Mm-hmm.
diverse. Maybe you have shoot, we talked about them not using one tight end. Maybe you can, throw in some two tight end sets because you still have Jerem Smythe and, he's more of a blocker as opposed to being like a real receiving threat. So it makes them more multiple. And, I remember I asked McDaniel about at the NFL scouting combine about the growth of the offense. Like, do you need to kind of double down on what you do? Or kind of pivot because now teams have 2 years worth of film on you. And he said, it's a constant evolution. He's like, we've never done the same thing, back to back years, especially since I've been here. So now I think that this Johnny Smith trade allows them to kind of lean into what they like to do, but also have kind of like different, branches of it, like different offshoots of it. They threw a lot of screens. I think they led the NFL or tied for first in the NFL in screen passes to wide, but it was also always to wide receivers. Now you can do that
Right.
to your tight end and have it be like a different look that teams haven't seen. So yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna see that. The money that they gave to Jordan Brooks, I think that was probably the biggest deal they've given so far. I think that'll probably be, I mean, if who knows? But my guess is that'll probably be like maybe the biggest deal they give. I think it was 3 years, $26.7 million, $30 million max value. I think that's probably what we're going to see, and then some really like smaller deals. Like the Johnny Smith deal was like 2 years, $8 million. Like it's those are the types of deals that
Yeah.
I think that we're going to see. The low cost, high upside, value signings that don't get the big headlines on day one, but in the middle of November, we're gonna say, hey, like, good thing the Dolphins made that move when they did.
Right.
I think that's the way they're gonna have to kind of operate, at least for the time being now, because they just don't have they don't have like the facilities and the funds to be big spenders. They have to kind of work around and work on a budget. Ball on a budget, so to speak. So I think about that, like you said, I mean, we didn't talk about it last week because that was before that happened. Recorded before that happened. But I think that was definitely one of those moves that it's high value, low cost. I think that we're going to see a lot more of those in the coming days and weeks for sure, and months. Because again, like I said, this is going to be a long, drawn out process for the Dolphins in terms of renovating. We won't say rebuilding this roster, but renovating the roster ahead of the 2024 season. All right. That brings us to the end of another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. I want to thank you guys as always for tuning in. Reminder to subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, like, share, comment, as well as subscribe to the Miami Herald. Barry and I were hard at work providing you with the latest Dolphins free agency updates. We've got our live blog. It's already posted for day 2. So as the Dolphins make moves, as they potentially lose some guys, whatever Dolphins free agency developments there are, we will have it for you at the Miami Herald. So definitely go to the Miami Herald website, bookmark the blog, and just refresh it every 5, 10, 20 minutes, whatever you want to do for your latest Dolphins updates. We'll be back next week to recap another week of Dolphins football and developments. But until then, you guys take care. See ya.